Hi everyone. So this week, your Insta post is going to be a little bit longer than normal, and it's really because I want to make sure that you are looking over the student examples of the literature review, which is posted under the module of week 8, as well as in the Canvas files folder for Project 3 student examples, or student examples. And so this prompt, as you can see, is meant to help you read through the student examples of a literature review and think about how you can begin to synthesize and utilize your own research for the continued drafting of your literature review. And so you'll see that I have some generic components to the literature review that I want you to think about when you're reading through the student examples, and then kind of some kind of close section analysis, or if you will, when you used to read, say, a literature book, and you had to do like kind of in-depth analysis of that writing. And so you can do this in bullet point. They don't have to be in full sentences particularly and/or paragraphs, but I do want to see that you've read through the 2 student examples of literature posted under the module week 8, and kind of looked through to see like what students are doing, what are they doing well, and what are they missing. Because as always, I always provide you with examples of things where students are doing some pretty good things, but there's also some stuff that maybe they still need to work on. All right. So for the generic components, when you read through the student examples, Creswell walks you through a literature review, and you've already drafted a literature review. But looking over the student, oh my gosh, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm sick. What is the overall goal of a literature review? I know a lot of you have posted in your Insta posts in week 7 that you're kind of maybe a little bit fuzzy about what a literature review is supposed to do. And so think about what it's supposed to do and how the students are doing that in their draft. So literature review is literally what it sounds like, a review of literature in order to establish what is a research problem or question. Why is that research problem or question important? How have past researchers researched and discussed and suggested ideas about that research problem, and how will you add on to that discussion? How will you attempt to kind of expand or continue to explore or replicate the type of research that you've found by others investigating that type of research problem? All right. So really think about that. What is this research question? Why is it important? How have others researched and suggested how this thing should be addressed or fixed? How are you adding on to that conversation, expanding that conversation, fixing that conversation? That's really what a literature review is supposed to do. All right, bullet point number 2. How did the student use the annotations to help them develop and organize the literature review? If you don't see citations literally thrown up all over the page, like literally if it doesn't seem like you are like stumbling over each sentence because there's so many in-text citations after each sentence, then there's something wrong, because the literature review is supposed to draw on past research in order to establish and validate the what, why, how, and what should be done, right? How does a literature review differ from other essays that you've written? So a lot of you have discussed this idea of like, I don't know how this literature review is or should be different from other types of academic essays that I've written. And again, it's because literature reviews are not necessarily meant to make some type of particular personal acclaim or argument, some in-depth kind of like rhetorical analysis or anything like that. It's really supposed to be review of past research in order to establish what is this problem, why is this problem important, how have others addressed it, in order for you to move to the next stage, which is, and what would I suggest or do or add or contribute to this particular research problem. So what is their focus in their literature review? Do they stay on a very clear focus that follows their kind of problem and its investigation and the statement of their problem with that list out their listed 3 or 4 research questions? How do they organize their literature review? Do they use headings? Do they move from broad to specific? Do they go from what, why, to how, to what should be done? What type of sentence structure or paragraph structure do they use? Does it work? Is it formal enough? How do they use the research in their literature review to move from broad to specific? And how do those components allow them to create and establish a strong literature review that answers those what, why, how, and what should be done, found, etc. for literature review? Now, once you've done that, and again, this shouldn't be super long. It's not meant to be like super time intensive, but I kind of want to get a sense as to what you think is happening in these two student examples. When does the author in this closed section analysis, when do they first introduce a source in this section and why? Should be almost immediately, correct? How much or what kind of information does the author provide about the source? Do they just kind of drop in a source without giving any kind of like background reference? Or do they kind of discuss how that source is integral or important, or sources are integral and important to this research topic? What kind of evidence do you see? Do you see lots of quotes, or do you see more paraphrases and summaries? You should be seeing hopefully more paraphrases or summaries of research, because the goal of a literature review is to utilize as much of the research that you found together in order to establish what is this research topic, why is this research topic important, and how has others researched this topic. So if you have direct quotes, that means you can only use one source. That's not so great when you should have every single one of your source being able to establish what is this research question. They should all be saying the same thing about what is this research question, right? When it gets down to how, like how are they suggesting things should be addressed or changed or considered or, so forth, then maybe, yeah, you have all of your sources might have kind of different strategies or approaches, or you might have only a couple that like agree with each other. But with the what and the why, pretty much every single one of your sources should be saying the same thing. What is this research question, and why is this research question important to examine, right? And so if you don't see that happening, multiple sources being used together in those two areas, then there's a problem. Why would an author only use one source per paragraph when there should be multiple sources referenced within a paragraph? Is there a time when that happens? If it does happen, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? I think you already know the answer to that, but kind of think about that. If that happens, how might students move from one source per paragraph to a further synthesis of their research to integrate more research? What would you suggest, or what would you do in order for that to happen? What other rhetorical moves did you notice? That means kind of like, what are they doing when it comes to their tone of voice, the structure, the arguments, whatever it is that they're making? And is that kind of what you think should be happening in a literature review? There's no right or wrong answer for any of these prompts questions, but it gives me a sense as to whether or not you've read through the examples and kind of where you're at in your own head when it comes to how you see and think a literature review should be established and what it should be doing. So I can at least see where you're at and hopefully give you some feedback if maybe there needs to be a little bit of a change of a mindset in regards to the purpose of a literature review. As always, I'm here for you if you need any questions, email, text, online chat, in-person chat, whatever it may be. All right, guys? All right.